All advice given is for general information purposes. All legal cases are different, and you should seek the advice of your own attorney before acting or making decisions. No attorney-client privilege applies to communications on this show, and no attorney-client relationship is created by calling or writing in. Attorney Rominger practices only in Pennsylvania and maintains his primary office in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Rominger here, 540-0580. That's right, 540-0580. We're going to answer your legal questions here on the air. I'm also going to be talking a little bit about quantitative easing. But we're going to do that later in the show. I'm not going to do that right off the bat. So if you got your legal questions, throw them in here, 540-0580. You know, you want to adopt a dog, divorce your husband. I don't know what you want to do. We'll talk about it. Andrew, have I got you?
Oh, thanks for taking my call, sir.
What's going on?
My daughter was involved in a small car accident the other week, and her car was not damaged very much, but she was struck in the rear end by somebody driving a rental car. And a week later, we got a letter from the rental car company that their initial investigation suggests that she might be negligent and therefore responsible for their damages. And yesterday we received a letter that stated that she was responsible or negligent and responsible for these damages. And I was wondering what to do. I didn't file a complaint with or a claim with my
right.
Insurance carrier because the damage was minor and actually I could fix it myself.
And you mean on her vehicle, your daughter's vehicle?
Yes, sir.
My first thought on the matter is you need to go to your insurance company and make them aware of the claim immediately.
Yes.
You always have an affirmative duty, and I'm not telling you this, I'm just telling everybody this. People sometimes go, well, I didn't want to tell my insurance about it. And at a certain point, your insurance company can say, look in the policy under the section of duties, and it says you got to tell us about any claim or potential claim as soon as you're fully cognizant of it. Okay. So with this, take it to your agent. They will handle it for you.
Okay, that's what I figured.
If for any reason that they didn't want to handle it for you, or they told you they were going to do what's called a reservation of rights or any such thing, then you might want to consult with your own attorney. But the answer is the insurance company is going to pay for legal counsel for you. What they're going to do most likely is make an evaluation of their own, and if they agree that your daughter was somehow negligent, probably settle it with the other insurance company. On the other hand, if they have a different version of it, the insurance companies may end up submitting it to a form of arbitration or even a lawsuit, but that will probably never actually involve very much court time, if any.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
All right, Andrew, take care.
You too, bye.
540-0580, Carl Rominger answering your legal questions here. We're going to be starting a jury trial in Lancaster County Monday morning, courtroom 10 at 9 a.m. It's a pretty good trial, so if anybody wants to stop in, we'll be picking a jury Monday morning and probably in full swing. I'll make sure to throw some Twitter posts up to keep you posted, but I'll be in Lancaster County Monday morning, 9 a.m. Doug, what's going on? Hey, Doug.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Just a quick question. Down here in Carlisle on High Street, when you're passing through the college,
right,
the students there don't seem to take any concern for how fast cars are moving, or they just walk straight into that crosswalk because state law says they have the right of way. I'm telling you, sometimes they walk right in front of the car, and I have to hit the brakes real hard, and I'm not going faster than 10 miles an hour.
I drive.
I have to write a letter to the... I'm sorry, you were going to say?
I drive through that area, and just for anybody who's listening and goes, well, I can't believe that these really intelligent Dickinson students would jump in front of cars. The caller's absolutely right. I've seen them do it myself. But go on, Doug.
Yeah, if I was to write a letter to the president to say somehow you have to help, let them know they need to pause for a moment, and traffic needs to move. They can't treat it as a common walkway. What are the legal rights of drivers in that situation with that state law that they have the right of way, and what are the rights of students? I'm unclear on how I would even begin drafting a letter.
Well, the short answer is at some point those students could probably be cited. A pedestrian doesn't have, just because it's a crosswalk, the pedestrian doesn't automatically have 100% right of way. And what do I mean by that? If there's a car coming down the street and they're getting closer and closer to the crosswalk, and you just sort of jump out in front of them just because it's in a crosswalk, you're actually negligent.
Okay.
that said, when you hit the kid in the crosswalk with your car, the supposition is going to be that probably you were the one who could have slowed down more easily, and did the kid really jump in front of you? So that said, and they have the same problem up in Shippensburg, by the way.
Okay.
You could write to the college. There's no requirement. I guess they could crack down on their kids. They could put campus security out there and say, hey, or develop a little system, of lights maybe. But that's a state road over there. That's part of the problem. My understanding has always been that they don't have the ability to just regulate it.
Okay.
But no, it's been a problem in Carlisle as long as I've lived there. I was probably one of those kids when I was at the law school nearby walking across, because we used to use the dining hall at Dickinson. But I always thought, you just don't jump in front of cars. But I know exactly what you're talking about, and the short answer is I guess some community pressure might be worthwhile. They've talked about doing a bridge. I think they should just do a tunnel. Why have an unruly bridge? Just make these kids walk underground.
Tunnel, everything costs money, or even just somebody...
Listen, they got more money than God over there at Dickinson. Don't let them fool you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's just frustrating because I watch them and they just walk straight out without fear. And growing up in Boston, kids die at BU. When I went to college, and just by crossing the street here with that sign, they just walk straight out in front. Is there any recourse to letting the college say somehow you got to?
You know what would be interesting? I wonder about this. Wonder if we could file a nuisance suit. Get a couple people from Carlisle, different people that live in different areas of Carlisle. Maybe somebody who lives on one side of the college and works, on the other side, so they have a legitimate reason to go down High Street every day, and file a nuisance suit against Dickinson College, and ask them to restrain their citizenship from jumping in front of cars, and put the barrel to them. I don't know. I don't know if it'd work or not. I have no idea. I've never saw anything like it before, but that's what the law is for. It's to be creative. I just don't know who wants to pay for that.
All right. Well, I'll ask around and see if I just didn't know if we really are completely at wrong.
You probably should just wing one with your mirror, and then after that, all right, Doug.
All right. Thanks. You very much.
540-0580. Obviously, I'm not advocating actually hitting anybody with your car, unless they really deserve it. Mike, you're on with Carl Rominger. What's going on? Hey, Mike.
Hi. This is Mike.
Yes.
Had a question on my in-laws have a family cabin, and they're toward retirement age, and there's some siblings, and we're all each have a spouse. And I guess the question is, they kind of want to keep it in the family. I guess all that falls into inheritance tax at some point. We're just talking to adding on to it, and I guess the other whole thing was, do they put me as an in-law on something too, or maybe we shouldn't in case one of the couples would split up or something like that.
So you guys inherited the cabin already?
Well, no, they're just retirement
okay.
age. So we're kind of looking at if everybody's in agreement to maybe adding on to it, which may require some expense from everybody,
right?
Maybe making us all part shareholders. But I guess what is a good advantage of
what I would recommend, and I recommend in these situations, if you're going to have, how many people are we talking about? 10 people in on the cabin? 2 people?
It'd be mom and dad plus 3 siblings plus their spouses.
Yeah. Now here's what happens: you start putting people's names on the deed, and while nobody's ever planning to get divorced,
right?
One person gets divorced, and all of a sudden, what do? What I would recommend is that you guys form a LLC or other entity to own the cabin, and then break up everybody as a partner, and then have a partnership agreement or what we would consider a shareholders agreement that speaks to what each person's rights and responsibilities are. But it also can include clauses that say, for instance, that in a divorce you're not allowed to sell the cabin and you get bought out, and here's how you get bought out. And by the way, we have up to 10 years to pay you 1/10 of your buyout per year. All kinds of little things you could do to kind of smooth that over.
Okay.
Particularly, when you get so many cooks in there, you just never know what's going to happen.
Sure, and I guess the other thing would be, well, maybe the shareholder should only be direct family and not the in-laws.
You can put restraint on that, but here's what happens. As you know, anything that you get as a husband is also owned by your wife.
Right.
Now, a gift from your parents might not, so we might have an exception to that. So if you were gifted into the cabin, we could argue that it's not marital property. But me being kind of extra cautious would want to use that vehicle maybe, but also tie it up. And we do this with business arrangements all the time. We restrain it so that husband or wife can't just jump on board in a divorce, also bankruptcy protections, etc., so it doesn't end up in some creditor's hands. I got to let you go, but if you want to talk to me some more, just go to weekendappointment.com. You can look me up, Dave.
Okay.
All right?
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Or I'm sorry, Mike. I meant Mike.
Yeah.
All right, Mike.
Okay, see you.
Got to go to break here. Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Let me see here. Who have I got? Dave.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I was a witness to domestic violence, and I called the police on 911.
Okay.
And when the police came to the scene, they did not interview me. Don't they have a responsibility to interview the witnesses?
Well, now you sound like my clients, the jurors, and the public when I talk to them. They go, well, the police investigated everything, and I'm like, they did. They have no obligation to do anything, actually. The police only job is to go out and check a situation out and make a determination and allocate the resources the way they see fit. Sometimes that means carefully interviewing each and every witness, and other times making a determination that they don't need to talk to witnesses, and sometimes that's correct and sometimes it's not. So let me ask it this way. So you saw some domestic violence, you called somebody, they showed up. Did they arrest anybody? Talk to anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because, if they go to the house and they say, hey, ma'am, did you really just hit your husband over the head with a frying pan? And he says, yeah. Or she says, yeah, I did whack him over the head. They don't need to talk to you at that point. I mean, they've got her confession. It might be nice to track you down, and it would be good housekeeping to confirm that with you, because later somebody might argue reasonable doubt. But it wouldn't surprise me at that point if they just wrote him up for summary harassment and moved on, and then they don't feel like they need to talk to you. But I understand. I mean, was there something you could have given them that you think they didn't get?
They could have asked they could have asked me what was happening, because I don't know what, if anything, they asked
right.
the parties involved. I was basically a third party.
Okay. And all I can tell you is this, is after they talked to those parties, they may have made a determination there was no follow-up. Maybe they weren't going to charge anybody. I don't know. But you see what I mean, that they get to make a determination. There's no requirement the police talk to anybody. So when I'm in a jury trial, for instance, I'll talk to the jurors afterwards, and they'll be under the assumption, they'll be like, well, how come the police didn't talk to that guy? I thought they had to talk to all the witnesses. No rule or requirement they do that. The quality of police work varies greatly with the quality of the police officers, but it also varies greatly with the ability of the officers to work on something. In some cities, I think Lancaster City is a good example. They've laid off police officers. They've refused to replace police officers. So you have, 2/3 the manpower doing the work that was overworking the force years ago. So they don't have time, for instance, to spend a lot of time, digging into things. Now, you're from the Camp Hill area. There, the police force isn't really overworked, but there probably was a host of other reasons why they just didn't deem you important to talk to. But I guess, go ahead.
What happened? It didn't happen in It didn't happen in Camp Hill. It happened outside of Camp Hill in another part of Cumberland County.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's not the first time that the police have been called to that residence.
Gotcha. And that's another problem. That's another problem that you see where, and I hate to say it, but when the police are called back and back and back and back and back to the same residence, they almost start to lose a sense of urgency.
Yeah, I understand that completely, because no one wants the victim doesn't want to press charges or do anything to stop what's going on.
I heard a police officer say to me one time that statistically half of all the women in the county where he works are victims of domestic violence, because they just divide the number of domestic violence incidents against women into the number of women in that county. And he said the reality of that is it's the same 70 women who call them out again and again and again and again, and then when they get there, they suddenly get amnesia and don't remember what happened, won't cooperate for hearings. And I'm not dissing victims of domestic violence, but I can tell you as a criminal defense lawyer, I've won a lot of cases simply because the domestic violence victim is refusing to testify. So, Dave, I hope the lesson learned here is that the police don't have any duty to investigate anything, and if you're ever a juror in a case or you're ever asked to stand in judgment of somebody else, you remember that the trial is probably the only real investigation you're ever going to get.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your input.
No problem. Take care.
Thanks. Have a great day.
540-0580. Maybe you guys can hear me editorializing a little bit there, but my point is, I really say this in all honesty, if you actually get involved with the legal system, you'll realize there's no duty on the police, the prosecutors, to dig up things that are consistent with innocence. And in fact, once they get their nose headed in a certain direction, they only complicate their lives if they dig too deep. Let's see here. Doug, you got a question on common law marriage?
Yes, sir. Yes, my specific question concerning common law marriage is, we know it's been rescinded, but we have a certificate while we were, of course, married. So is that still good on a common law marriage, or has it only been rescinded up to the date that the new law went in effect?
That new law says that any common law marriage that existed prior to the passage of that act can be a common law marriage. So you might have one.
Then you're saying that it is legal.
It would be recognized as a legal marriage as long as it was consummated before that date.
Yes.
And a common law marriage requires we say in presente as opposed to an in futuro. I hope we can all figure out what that means, in the present versus in the future, because we have to use that crazy Latin. But the idea is, if I say, will you marry me, that means, and then you say yes. First of all, it's probably not going to be a legal marriage, but just assuming we're both man and woman, you say yes, we don't have a common law marriage because that's in the future. But if I say, I want to be your wife right now, and you say, I want to be your husband right now, well, let's agree to be married going forward. That used to be how you did a common law marriage. The problem was, how'd you prove it? Because what happens is when somebody goes and files for divorce, the other side says, well, we never got married. There's no divorce here. And I never entered into some crazy agreement like that. And then the other time it happens, right? Somebody dies, and there's a spouse taking against the will, and the kids of the deceased person are saying there was no marriage, and the other party saying, yeah, I was married, even though we never went and got married. So the court struggled, and they use circumstantial evidence to prove the marriage. If you held yourself out as a marriage, how did you live? Did you live together? Take the name, file joint taxes, all that sort of stuff. But guess what? You probably, when you have a certificate, a lot of people over the years, in order to get health insurance, started filling out affidavits of common law marriage. And an affidavit of common law marriage is just that, pretty clear and convincing evidence of an in the present intent to be married. And I've had a number of people over the years who accidentally got married by filling out those affidavits to get health insurance. So that's the skinny on common law marriage.
So we got it because we love each other, and that was the reason. For personal reasons, we didn't want to get married, church-wise, I say. But so we got the common law. But a lawyer addressed a group of people here at a local senior center and said no common law marriage is any good. So my ears pricked up on that a little bit.
And that's not correct, because when they passed that law, they were very clear that is not retrospective. It's only prospective ban on common law marriages. The idea was to leave everybody where they were, but say going forward, you have to go get the marriage license.
Yes. Well, thank you. Very clear on that. Then we both feel better now.
Gotcha. And if you ever want me to, I'd be happy to look at your affidavit or your agreement just to make sure it has all the magic words in it. All right, Doug?
Well, evidently they only mailed that out from the state. That it's a certificate of marriage, I call it. I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. It's stupid, but As far as I know, they only mailed that out.
I just have to see what it says to be sure.
Yes.
All right, brother.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
God bless you. Bye.
Bye. 540-0580. Let's see, who's next? David in Harrisburg.
Hi, Carl. Hey, as you may know, the ACLU is suing the city of Philadelphia over the stop and frisk policy. I was just wondering, what legal basis do they have to have a stop and frisk policy? I understand that last year they stopped and frisked over 250,000 people. And New York City has stopped and frisked over 500,000 people last year.
And currently, as I understand the law, and in my humble opinion, because search and seizure is always changing, but here's the general rule. A frisk of a person or a pat down is basically called a Terry pat. Terry search. And in Terry v. Ohio, the U.S. Supreme Court years ago said you have to have a reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot in order to stop somebody, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're not free to leave. It's an investigatory detention based upon reasonable suspicion. And it's an articulable suspicion, not just a hunch. And the pat-down portion or the frisk portion, you have to have an additional basis to believe that their person may have a weapon. And so you have to be able to articulate something further about a weapon. And I just had one of these. I did a DUI trial on Monday. Got an acquittal, by the way. But during the video, I noticed something. Kind of made me laugh. The officer, when he orders the guy out of the car, 20 minutes into the stop or 10 minutes into the stop, and as soon as the guy gets out of the car, he just pats him down, and then he reaches in his pockets and looks in his pockets, and I said to him on the stand, what are you doing there? And he's like, I was just patting him down for officer safety. I was like, well, what was your articulable basis that he might have a weapon at this point? Because you can only pat down and frisk or search, actually, with an arrest at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no articulation on a DUI stop that the person has a weapon just because you got him out of the car. But the answer is yes, there are a lot of law enforcement officers out there, and for some reason the state police seem to be particularly guilty of this, which is frisking everybody that they get out of a car. Now, in Philadelphia, New York, you're talking about where they just grab people on the street.
Mm-hmm. A stop.
They just stop them and say, we're going to pat you down real quick. And I don't know what their articulable basis for that is, and I do think it is a violation of the Fourth Amendment, at least as I understand it. Now, they might articulate this is a high-crime area, and we've got an alert, and I don't know what else they're going to put in there to particularize it.
But does Terry address the high-crime areas?
Well, our courts have said that a high-crime area is a factor that the officer can articulate in supporting his basis for the stop and the frisk, but it can't just be a high-crime area.
Mm-hmm.
You have to articulate other things. So, classic case example, and I got to go to break here, don't I? Oh yeah, I got to go to break.
Okay, well, thank you, Carl.
All right, take care. 540-0580. Welcome back, Carl Rominger here, answering your legal questions. 540-0580, and I want to remind you. Of course, we'll be doing the bonus podcast edition today, so you can keep calling 540-0580 after 3 o'clock, and we'll take your calls till about 3:45, and I know a lot of you have taken advantage of that in the past. So if you're out traveling right now, you really had a question you wanted to get answered, and also, Mark, have I got you?
Yes, you do.
I've got Mark. Mark, say your last name for me before I butcher it again. It's Virginus.
Virginus.
See, I always butcher it, and I feel bad, and then I don't really care. Whatever.
I know you don't.
Reason I brought you on, and I know sometimes I get these crazy callers like, why you bring a financial guy on a legal show? I don't even have the two have anything to do with each other. And, of course, I always say, yeah, they overlap quite a bit, but I'm more interested in something else going on right now. Quantitative easing. And I know you got to give your little disclaimer, so do that so we can talk about this.
Okay. I'm a registered investment advisor offering securities through Financial Network Investment Corporation. Member SIPC, Mirus Financial Partners, which is the name of my firm. Mirus Financial Partners and Financial Network are not affiliated. So you want me to answer the QE2 question for you?
Yeah, I have some feelings about this, but I thought it might be helpful for listeners to understand because Glenn Beck the other day was calling this the Weimar moment. Saying this Is this when the Weimar Republic goes into tubes? I mean, explain this whole concept for me, would you?
Okay, quantitative easing, since we can't take interest rates any lower because they're right now between 0 and 0.25, what the Federal Reserve Bank has decided to do is go out and buy more bonds from institutions like banks. So, for example, they're writing, in Glenn Beck has some validity in a sense that the federal government or the Federal Reserve is writing checks that really can't be cashed. They're just printing some money. So, say, for example, your corner bank has, I don't know, pick a number, $100 million in bonds. The Fed can come to them and say, hey, we're going to buy those from you. So here's the cash. Thank you for your bonds. All right, now you have $100 million of cash. Go lend it.
Right.
Go give it to consumers. Go flood the system. Get people out there doing what they do, whether they charge things on their credit card, whether they loan to go buy a house, get a mortgage, or line of credit. Go do something. Put the money in motion. And the reason why Glenn Beck is so miffed, and a lot of us are miffed, is, again, the government said, or the Fed said, $600 billion, that's billion with a B, as in Baker, by second quarter next year. So they might do all of it. They might do some of it. They might even do more. Who knows? But what happens is when you have money in motion, as I said in your show before, or velocity of money, and banks do start to lend this out, there you will see inflation. And because of TARP, because of stimulus, because of all the different rescues that we've done over the last year and a half, and now you add this on top of it, you're going to have an overwhelming amount of money that when inflation comes due or starts rearing its head, it could accelerate and go fast. Hence, you want to be in commodities, you want to be in gold. You definitely do not want to be in bonds. I'll say that again. You definitely don't want to be in bonds because bonds move opposite of inflation. However, there is one type of bond called a TIP where you can retain your principal and do fairly well as with floating rate bonds. But long story short, this is a message from the Fed that if you stay in cash or if you stay in bonds, you will feel the pain. They're almost forcing you to start putting your money in the stock market or start buying assets, so to speak. Because you're going to get buck kissed. You're going to get very little return in bonds and in cash and in CDs and so forth. If you stay on the sidelines in that kind of product, you're going to need to go into equities of some sort to keep up with whatever inflation is going to be, just to keep up with the price of the tea.
And I want to remind the callers, it's 540-0580, 540-0580, and of course we're going to keep the lines open until 3:45, even if the show goes off the air at 3 o'clock. So call in if you want to talk to Mark about anything financial, me, anything legal. Be happy to try to field your questions here, obviously. What I really want to, if somebody wants to sound off about quantitative easing or they have any feelings about that, I'd love to know as well. My big thing is it risks, well, they're attempting to create inflation because they want to get money moving.
Correct.
And the theory is, like you're saying, is they're sending a message, there's going to be some inflation, so now you need to move your money around, and instead of parking it, because the argument is a lot of companies have their money parked in cash, they're not spending it, they're sitting on trillions of dollars as a whole business is, and banks aren't lending the money, and people aren't moving it around, and so this is sort of to kick you in the butt to make you do it. But as I understand it, there's no guarantee that the inflation rate stays marginal. It could spike.
That's correct, and then the Federal Reserve is going to turn around and aggressively raise interest rates to hopefully stem off aggressive inflation. Which
isn't that, though, what happened under Carter, which is inflation was high and interest rates were high at the same time?
Yes, that was a bad situation, and I hope, I listen to a lot of this stuff and I read a lot of white papers and what have you. Bernanke is a historian, if not almost an expert, on the Great Depression. And, of course, everyone's calling this the Great Recession. I'm hoping he's not going to make the mistakes of the past. He understands where that is. But you're right. I mean, the next question you're probably going to ask is, well, what if this doesn't work? What if growth doesn't happen? Then what? Well, we're going to have QE3, and QE4 and QE5. I think the Fed's going to continue to throw whatever they can throw at this economy to get it jump-started. And my worry is we fall into a Japan-like economy for 10 to 15 years where we have no growth, no nothing. It's just we just slog along here for a long period of time.
We call that the last decade in Japan. Hank.
Yes, sir.
You're on with Carl and Mark.
I'm not disputing your guest speaker. I just had a question regarding the statement I think he made about if the scenario that he's talking about happens, that so much cash or whatever is sitting on the sidelines, and if you have inflation, what would be wrong with the idea that at some point in time, when the inflation kicks in, that you do invest whatever it is in bonds or whatever? Now, again, you're just picking an arbitrary point in time, but if the cash is there and you wait till inflation goes up, interest rates goes up, wouldn't conceivably that you would jump in and you would get higher interest rates? That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, Hank, that's a good question. What we're basically saying here, and what Carl and I were trying to communicate, and I guess it didn't come off, is that if inflation does spike, most likely the Fed won't be able to keep up with the higher interest rate. And remember, whenever the Federal Reserve either increases or decreases their rates, which is basically what banks are borrowing money at, before it actually trickles down to the quote-unquote Joe consumer, you're looking at 3 to 6 months, if not 6 to 8 months in some cases, before you actually feel that on your investments or feel that in your rates of return at the bank on a CD or on a money market account or what have you. Plus, don't forget, inflation is your buying power of money. So if I have $1 and inflation spikes up, I'm not actually going to get $1 worth of goods and services for that. I'm actually probably going to get less than that because I don't have the earning potential on that dollar. And I don't mean to confuse folks out there, but inflation is one of the key aspects of eroding one's portfolio. You need to keep up with the inflation. Go ahead, Carl.
Well, I was going to say, and one of the ways, Mark, when I've talked with folks to try to explain inflation to them, I've said, let me give you an example. Let's say you wanted to buy a Corvette, 30 years ago. You had to give so much silver, if you wanted to trade ounces of silver for the car. You'd have to trade roughly the same ounces of silver today for the equivalent car. Nonetheless, the price of the car is much more because the dollars are much cheaper than they were back then because of this creeping inflation through all those years. And I know that's an oversimplification, but that's the idea that, if you go commodity to commodity, you can see that the dollars themselves have gotten cheaper and cheaper over the years, which is why a loaf of bread used to be 5 cents.
Right.
Now, I'm going to go to break here. When we come back from the break, I think what I want to do is maybe get some more callers on this, 540-0580. If you guys want to jump in and tell us how you feel about quantitative easing, the government's financial policies, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, whatever you want to talk about, or ask a legal question. But when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about China and their dollar surplus and how this might anger them. So keep that in your head here. 540-0580. I'll see you after the break.
Let's return to Weekend Appointment with Carl Rominger on WHP 580.
Hey, welcome back. 540-0580. Well, I don't know if I ever forget that number or not. It's going to be burned indelibly into my brain. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here with Mark Virginis answering your legal questions. And we're talking right now a little bit on the financial side of the house on quantitative easing, which probably is something that's boring the heck out of everybody. But you know what? You need to know about this. You need to know what's going on. You need to know what your government's doing to you. And I don't know, Mark, let me ask this question. First of all, I know the Fed is independent, right? I mean, our monetary policy is not controlled directly by the United States government, it's by this independent entity, the Fed.
Say that again for me, please.
Our monetary policy is not controlled directly by the federal government. The Fed's an independent entity. It's not part of the government per se.
Yeah, that operates almost like a for-profit corporation, correct.
But the next question is, obviously they have a duty, and to what answer, I don't know how much beholden to politicians they are in the strictest sense, but there's been a big anger in the Congress, and Toomey ran well on this with the anti-China line. And China has this huge surplus of dollars right now that they're banking on. And it seems to me
they have huge warehouses of our bonds.
Right, and it seems to and it seems to me we're sticking it to them because we've been trying to get them to stop artificially holding down the value of their currency, or holding it up. I forget what, but this has been something that we've been angry about, and our Congress has argued and said they need to do something about. Now suddenly we're making a move which is likely to inflate the dollar, which is likely to hurt the Chinese holdings in U.S. securities. I mean, is that something we really want to do right now to our biggest debt buyer or one of our biggest debt buyers?
Right, and even Germany came out too. And Germany basically said that the United States is clueless with their monetary policy. That was almost like as a press conference recently. Yeah, we're angry. Here's the thing. I mean, where else, in a nutshell, where else is China going to go? We're still the number one country. We're still the place for capitalism. We're still the number one economy in the world. Still, where the theory is, where else is China going to go to be able to get that kind of return on their dollar and that kind of safety? So yeah, while at the same time it builds up the political rhetoric that's out there, in the end, China has nowhere else to go. But this is by no. And your callers are probably thinking this way, and most WHP listeners think this way. It's not so much what happens today; it's 2012, 2014, when some of these bills need to get paid and the economies do come back. I mean, the United States is looking to jumpstart our economy, and Bernanke has said this because he believes the United States is a global player. If we come back, the rest of the world comes back. Like the old analogy I say, if the United States gets a cold, the rest of the world gets a flu. And we need to do what we need to do, according to Bernanke, to get to jumpstart this economy, and then the world in general will prosper.
Right. Don, you're on with Carl and Mark. Hey, Don.
Yes, hi. My question is, your guest mentioned that the Fed goes out and to put all these billions of dollars into the economy, they go to banks and buy bonds from them. I'd like to know a little more about that. These bonds, are these government bonds? Are they just general issue bonds from corporations? I don't quite understand that.
It could be. It could take on different classes, but typically they're short-term Treasury notes, Treasury bills, Treasury bonds, 10 years, 30 years. The banks typically will put some of their cash in products that they can always get their money back out of, while still earning some kind of nominal rate of return. That's for the overall safety of the bank. It's not necessarily to return to shareholders in the form of a dividend, that cash, but they always have their reserves in something very safe, very structured. So if there's ever, people want to come and cash out their CD, they always have to have cash on hand in large amounts of it. So they always invest in U.S. government-type securities. And
so I think, Don, that's kind of where some of my concern comes in. What this essentially is they're buying U.S. government debt.
Mm-hmm.
And by directly buying debt, they're taking it out of the hands of the banks and other people who typically hold it domestically, which means there's more people buying it, I guess, which cheapens or might actually raise or actually would decrease the returns on it, I would assume, because the more people bidding, the lower the returns on it. And in the meantime, though, it is literally like printing money because it's the Treasury who benefits from this.
So
right.
They're replacing.
Go ahead.
So they're replacing government debt in these institutions with cash that they've printed. But what incentive does the financial institution have to redeem this debt for this printed money?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but I would think most institutions would probably jump at the chance to buy that because, as Carl said, let's just say the bank down the road does it, does a switcheroo with the Fed, but the other bank down the other side of the street decides not to. Well, the bank down the street that decided not to just devalued his holdings because there is going to be a lot of banks who go out and say, yeah, give me the cash. Cash is king. I could take the cash and I'll take on more loans and I'll take on more mortgages and what have you. So, yeah, you're going to be, I don't want to say forced, but it's going to be a wise move. And $600 billion is a big number, huge number. So, I mean, they're going to, like, Bank of America, Citi. I mean, they're going to big, huge banks.
Well, they're going. They're also, I would guess, Don, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm just going to speculate that if any of these banks were to balk at it, they're already wholly owned subsidiaries anyhow, because the federal government's got their puppet strings all the way into those banks.
Right.
From the last 3 or 4 government interventions.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Don.
Good talking with you.
Bye.
Want to remind the callers 540-0580. If you got a legal question, shoot. Carl Rominger here answering your legal questions. Mark, I'm going to be down in your neck of the woods this next week with a jury trial in Lancaster, so I'll make sure I stop and smoke some cigars with you at the Moose.
There you go. Yeah, they got they got some inventory back in, so it's looking pretty good right now.
And can you hang with me for the bonus podcast edition?
If you'd have me, yeah, sure.
Yeah, awesome. 540-0580, 540-0580. We're going to keep taking callers all the way till about 3:45. Here comes the music. So I guess for the regular show, I'll see you folks next week. Don't forget to check out the bonus podcast online at WHP 580. And we'll remind everybody to get those free wills at weekendappointment.com. Had a bunch of people in my office this week getting them. It's a real nice process. Remember, you can keep calling 540-0580 till 3:45. I will see you next week.